How do you know if you're in a great relationship or even a good one? How do you know if you're making a huge mistake? Relationships are often the most intense and important arena we'll ever enter in our lives. And part of that intensity is wondering sometimes, especially in the late night fights, wondering in the moments when one or both of you are well past your limit, wondering when you're needing support from someone who for whatever reason can't seem to show up for you, wondering, would this even happen in the right relationship? So today on the podcast, I want to talk about what makes a great relationship. And while there's no way I could get into every facet of what that is, my intention for this episode is really to help give you some tools to decide in those moments whether that's what you've got, that's what you have the potential for, or if it's time to act in service of your best love, whatever that means for you. On today's episode, I wanted to help you understand how to find discernment in those moments around this question, so that when you find yourself trying to decide whether you've chosen the right person, or if it's time to make a change, to reconsider where you stand, that you have a good way of holding and honoring that inquiry. And if this topic of unmasking great and poor relationships scares you, maybe you find yourself contending with a pit in your stomach, or that familiar voice that's been poking at you in those hard moments in your current relationship, telling you to cut and run, I think that what you're going to hear in this episode might surprise you. Because honestly, there's a lot of bad information out there. There's a lot of people trying to make you categorize your relationship into codependence or lacking in divine masculinity or this or that buzzword, right? There's a lot of people touting a version of intimacy, of being in relationship that ignores our humanity, our imperfections, our inherent flaws. And it can be really hard to actually be discerning when you need to be and when you want to be in the face of all of this noise about what makes a relationship good or great or worthy of your time and attention. So that's what I want you to come away from this episode with. I want to help you be discerning about your choice of relationship so that you can stop cataloging the imperfections that fuel your doubt and really build a healthy, reflective skill to help you decide decisively whether you're with the right person or not. At the end of this episode, you're going to walk away with a healthy sense of what makes a great relationship great, so that you can create more of that for yourself. Stay tuned. This is Reclaiming the Gentle Man. I'm Dave Lashansky. So I want to start out this episode by naming a pattern I see in a lot of heterosexual relationships. A lot of men in relationship with women will show up to a men's circle and describe, using usually the vaguest terms possible, that their wife or girlfriend blows up at them. Oftentimes a guy will come in during a particularly intense season, right, where the blow-ups feel like they're happening all the time. And he's confused and he does not understand how to change this, how to get out of it, because it sucks. The experience they describe usually involves receiving a lot of a biting tone, right? A raised voice, yelling, name-calling, some version of disrespect that makes this man hunker down, armor up, and try to just outlast the storm. He feels powerless and helpless. Sometimes he'll talk about how the one thing that she just can't seem to let go of from way back in their relationship comes up, and when that happens, he can't hold back any longer, and he himself blows up in response. Right? He can no longer hold this stoic, hunkered down version of him that can wear the storm, right? He reaches his limit and he himself blows up. Maybe he starts yelling. Maybe he brings up his own resentments from the past. And he'll often talk about this part with a ton of guilt and shame that he wasn't strong enough, right? That he let a woman talk to him like this without defending himself. And often what's under the surface of that too is some guilt and some shame that he's actually still choosing to stay with this person. It's a really common story. It's the kind of thing that a lot of us witnessed growing up, and it's the kind of thing that can make us question whether we've found someone capable of giving us the rewarding and satisfying love we really crave. We often put this in terms of maturity, right? It makes us wonder if we found someone who has emotional maturity if they blow up at us, if they disrespect us. And it makes us wonder whether we're making a bad choice by choosing to stay in light of all this evidence. Now, from a woman's perspective, this blow up is often a last-ditch effort after days or weeks or months or even years of trying to be heard and trying to connect and trying and meeting resistance. Right? When the blow up happens or keeps happening, it's often that she wants more than anything just to get through, to break through the armor, the sleepiness, to be heard without being dismissed, to feel like her pain and her needs matter, to trust that she can bring more of herself into the relationship and still be loved there. And the volatility creating so much stress and tension in him might be the only way she's been able to get his full attention. Not because she wants drama, but because she's exhausted by her struggle and she wants him to wake up. These are often the words I hear. I'm exhausted and I want him to wake up. And on her end, she's wondering too. She's wondering, would I have to fight to be felt like this in the right relationship? Is there a man out there that's awake enough to hear me, that cares enough to hear me? So both people are coming away questioning, and both people are hurting. And both might be doubting themselves and each other, feeling totally unable to sort through what's theirs and what's their partner's, and how given all the uncertainty and pain and dissatisfaction and disrespect, how could this ever be a great relationship? Could this ever be the sacred partnership that I long for? These are great questions, important questions, and exactly the kind of questions that I want to give you real and useful ways to sort out for yourself, along with some of the context for what you may or may not be comparing your deep, intimate personal life to that could be causing you some unnecessary grief and hopelessness. Because the portrait of the relationship that I just painted for you can happen in a million different ways for a million different reasons, and I genuinely believe that none of it will serve you in identifying whether the relationship you have is right for you. So today's episode is about getting clear on that. It's about clarity, about whether the relationship you have is right for you, and how to decide for yourself. What makes a great relationship? And how do I know if I have the means to create that in the relationship that I'm in? Because here's the deal. You will attract partners that will offer you the lessons you're meant to learn. You will attract the partners that will instigate your evolution. They will call forth from inside of you a strength and a power that you did not know you had, or that you don't, maybe in those struggling moments, believe that you do have. And at some part in the process, when you're burning in that fire that relationship stokes, you're going to wonder whether you're with the right person or just suffering trying to make something broken work. And one of the keys to distinguishing a great relationship from a poor one is simply having the capacity to honor that question. This is a big one. Have you sat with that question of whether you're with the right person? of whether this person you've chosen is worthy of your choice? Have you allowed yourself to be moved by that question? That's a big deal. But it does take self-awareness to do it. It takes understanding where you have some work to do and honoring the fact that you're with someone that has their own work to do as well. So how do you navigate that? Let's dig in. You're in the fire, you're frustrated or angry, ashamed or hurting or reeling, questioning whether you've made a poor choice and whether a great relationship could ever look like this. And you're wondering what you do. How do you decide whether the thing you're in is still good, but simply hard, or actually harmful, or just wrong for you? Whether this is part of growth, or whether this is part of growing apart. And here's where I want you to really focus in, really get familiar with your internal dialogue. What is the inner context in which this questioning is happening? And I want you to do this in a very particular way. I want you to notice if there's a particular kind of judgment coming through about your relationship. Maybe it's about your partner, maybe it's about you, maybe it's about the two of you together. And I want you to hone in on whatever judgments are there. Where are they coming from? Who is it inside of you? What is the voice? Is it a person in your life that you imagine judging your current relationship? Is it fear? What does it sound like? What does it feel like in your body when this voice comes through? Is it a parent or a sibling that you hear inside of you who'd be ashamed if they saw how you were allowing yourself to be treated or how you were treating your partner? Is it a friend whose relationship you compare yours to? Is it an ideal partner or a past partner that you're comparing your own or your partner's actions to? Identify what, where, who this voice of judgment is. This is key to help you step out of the loop to access clarity about what's happening. Part of the reason we often stay looping in the question of, is this the right relationship? Is this a great relationship? Is because we're afraid of the consequences of knowing the answer. We're afraid of the consequences of our choice, whether that's staying in the relationship, changing it, or leaving it. And operating out of that fear, that looping fear, is not the mechanism for clarity. Fear is keeping that loop spinning and spinning and spinning. So how do we address this fear? We do it by locating and really becoming aware of the judgments we're holding about ourselves and our partners. And those judgments can be the beginning of real, meaningful, actionable clarity. When you can look at them objectively, when you can hear them, when you can see them for what they are. And I want to be really clear here. The point of illuminating these judgments, getting objective about the judgments you're holding about your relationship, is not to eliminate them. The point is to learn about them, to understand what the judgment is, so that you can understand some of the unconscious players that are keeping you wondering and keeping you out of clarity and out of action. Because part of why I'm making this episode is that I want people to learn to direct their own energy to make their relationship great if it's got the potential for it. Or to take the action to find one that does have that potential. And to do that, we have to understand some of these unconscious operating systems that are always at play, especially in relationship. So identify, learn about, really come into some kind of relationship with these judgments that you have about your relationship. This is, I think, where the common dialogue that we hear and see on Instagram and in movies often does us a huge disservice. Because many of us are diagnosing our relationships using clinical terms like codependent or anxiously attached or securely attached, or spiritual terms that feel really vague and are honestly generally unhelpful. And these diagnoses often contribute to the spinning, the circling, the looping inside that we do that has us oftentimes rejecting the opportunities right before us to create the great relationship that we're longing for. And I want to give an example of this so that you really understand what I'm talking about. One piece of advice I often see targeted, especially to women, is this idea that you shouldn't have to teach a man how to love you. And this, to me, is such a painful thing that I've heard over and over that I think really speaks to our illusions about a great relationship, what a great relationship is and looks like as a culture, right? Because this idea that there exists out there in the world a person who will just know exactly how to love you in precisely the way you deserve and want. And I think this is true for all of us, not just women. I think this idea that that person exists and that if you haven't found them, you can't have the relationship of your dreams. I think that idea is so genuinely harmful for people that are really doing the work or that want to do the work to choose their relationship. And it is so painful to watch from the outside people who are making choices about their love using other people's misinformed criteria. I think this notion about the right one will just know how to love you comes from a lot of hurt. And that is important and valid hurt. But just like fear, hurt is not the mechanism for clarity and action that I'm talking about here. No, we want to tap into our discernment. We want to take control of our own evolution, right? Lead ourselves into our own evolution to take action that is aligned with our own personal vision for our best life, right? That's the mechanism we're talking about here. And it's the thing I believe our relationships are here to teach us, to help us unlock. That, to me, is what a great relationship means. The opportunity to get to know yourself well enough to know how you need to be loved is in itself a beautiful endeavor. But inviting someone else, a partner, into that way of being with you, learning to ask for that, to hold sacred what you need and what you want to feel loved and secure and supported and cared for and alive and vital and connected, that is next level. That is powerful evolutionary stuff. This, to me, is the key to our evolution. It's what makes relationships so exciting and so intense, right? It is one of the greatest opportunities that your relationship can offer. And to me, it's the foundation of what makes a great relationship. Because the most important learning that I've done in my relationship, going on 10 years now, is learning to declare my needs and hold loving and balanced boundaries around getting them met, and endeavoring to learn what I need at each new phase of my life. That is beautiful work. It's part of the criteria for my great relationship. And it took a lot to get there, a lot of work, a lot of pain, a lot of therapy, a lot of tears, a lot of yelling, a lot of turmoil to get there. I used to be ashamed of that, and I think a lot of us have a lot of shame around the intensity that our relationships create in our lives. But if you are committed to your own evolution and with someone who is doing the same, with someone who cares to strive and be with you and accept your humanity, maybe not all the time, but when it's time for repair, when it's time to come together to reconnect, can recalibrate to that loving energy of being in it together, striving for a similar vision of what makes us feel alive and connected. That's powerful. This is the point that I want to leave you with today. I think a great relationship necessarily includes struggle. I think it necessarily includes turmoil and losing yourself sometimes. losing your cool sometimes. And one of the powerful red lines that mark a great relationship for me is not that we don't hurt each other, but that we hold repair as sacred. That we do whatever we can to address resentment at its root when we notice it percolating, and we allow our connection to bring us both a feeling of safety and communion and unfurling into a state of being witnessed and held and adored that is as scary as it is satisfying. And that we are together endeavoring to learn about ourselves so that we can play at that edge together through each new phase of life. And yes, there are seasons where it's not going to be this kind of intense. And yes, there are life circumstances that make it really hard to do this work together. And that's okay too. But if you do not sense an avenue that is going to make you feel satisfied, it's going to be really hard to stay together, to honor each other the ways that a great relationship needs us to. Sometimes it creates a ton of uncertainty. There will usually be a sense of loss for that perfect partner that you wish was there. But maybe there's also inside of that room to deepen in your connection, to bring forward the parts of you that are imperfect too, more so, in a way that allows your partner to really choose you too. But I want to leave you with this. Stop diagnosing your relationships. Stop going along with this notion that you don't want or need a codependent partnership, because relationships are inherently codependent. Most of us are choosing to live and be in the life of another human being, right? And their moods are going to affect yours. Their struggles are going to affect yours. Their energy is going to affect yours. That is codependence. And if this is news to you, I'd imagine that there are plenty of other unconscious or disserving judgments floating around for you that could help you enter into a state of more clarity and action to create the relationship that you want, and out of the looping and the hiding, keeping you stuck and dissatisfied. And if you're in the midst of these woods and feeling unsure or just lost, this is a great moment, as I will keep repeating on this show, to find professional help. Find a therapist or a coach who can hold you through this inquiry, whose opinions and personal life will ideally not insert themselves into your exploration. This is often what friends will do when it comes to relationships, and it's why I don't recommend bringing these struggles necessarily to your friends, because I can't stress enough how useful an unshaming, unjudgmental, and detached space can be to find your clarity, especially in the midst of so much noise. Relationships often are where we experience some of the deepest emotional wounding, but also some of the most powerful, blissful, ecstatic experiences we will ever have in our lives. There are infinite ways and criteria for what makes a relationship great. And I think the more agency you take to define what that is for yourself, the more connected you stay to what it is that you really want, to learning how it is that you need to be loved, what feels good in your body, what supports you in creating the life that you want. The more connected you get to that, the easier it's going to be for you to decide whether the relationship you're in is the one that you really want. That, to me, is what a great relationship is. To use your agency to determine and to create what it is that you really want. It's what helps you lead that life. I hope this serves you in seeing maybe a little more clearly what you have, and hopefully a little more clearly what it is that you want, to help you find your way ever closer to the great relationship that you dream of. Whatever that means for you, I wish you great courage and sweet clarity in this. If you're listening to this and you are curious about working with me, I offer one-on-one and couples support. I have 2 open spots in my calendar right now for 2 individuals or couples looking for support in their life, in their relationship, and into coming into a greater sense of presence and connection with themselves and their partners. Also, I'll be running my men's 21-day intensive program again soon, so stay tuned for that. We're going to start up again in the middle of the summer. As I've mentioned before, I create this podcast myself, and I have a company that creates podcasts for others, where I work with some amazing editors and support staff to put great ideas out into the world. If this is something you're interested in, we run a free webinar every month on whether starting a podcast is the right thing for you or not. And having done this now for a couple of months, I can say it is a profound challenge, but also a great gift and one of my favorite new practices for my business and my career. If that sounds like something you're interested in, get in touch. You can go to davidbenjaminsound.com. So keep your eyes here. Thank you for your ears, and may you enjoy the pursuit of the relationship of your dreams. I'll be back in a week.